Hey guys, welcome back. How are you? I hope you all are good and doing well. In this lecture, we will learn how to create nested forms in Rails 8 using Stimulus.js. Okay, nested forms are a very common pattern for handling dynamic form fields like adding or removing associated records on the fly, especially with has many relationship. And this is the time saving for some important cases as well. For example, let's say in a Rails application, you have a project model that is associated with many tasks. I mean, a project can have many tasks and each task must belong to at least one project. So now to create record for the projects and tasks, the simplest way is to create separate forms for both project and task. And in the task form, what you can do to assign a project, that you can add a drop down or select box, and where you can select the project for that particular task. Okay, and this is the very simple and clean way. But what you will do if you are asked to implement only one form for project model and then create tasks using this form only as a nested form. Okay, it seems quite challenging because by default in Rails 8 we are using Stimulus and even in Rails 7 as well, and we do not have any gem for creating such forms with ease. Okay, previously when the Stimulus was not by default, we have Cocoon gem. Okay, but now with Stimulus it is not supporting well. Okay, so in this lecture we will see how to create nested forms using Stimulus for saving child model data along with the parent model record. Okay, so let's start that. So let me first go to the project directory. Okay, here I'm using a sample Rails application that I already created. Okay, you can try this with any of your existing Rails application, or you can create a new Rails application as well. Make sure that your Rails application has a support for Stimulus.js. Okay, let's say if you are doing it in already existing Rails application, so it must have Stimulus support. Or if you are creating a Rails new Rails application, then it must be Rails 7 or Rails 8. So you will get Stimulus by default. Okay, now let's start with the example for implementing nested form with Stimulus.js. Okay, so first go to the terminal. Okay, and in the terminal open a new tab. Here what we will do, we will add a project model with attributes like title and description. Okay, here we can create project model using scaffolding. Why scaffolding? Because our main point here is to learn how to create nested form, not how to create controllers, views and model. Okay, separately. So we will use the scaffolding tool here. Okay, so let's generate the scaffold. So Rails G scaffold, then project, here title and description should be text. Okay, and generate this scaffold. Okay, so what it will do, that it will create model, migration, controller, views, everything for you to get ready running the project into the browser. Okay, and then for the task model, we do not need to run the scaffold but only the model. Why? Because we are not going to create views and controllers for the task, but we will only create the nested form for the task. So we just need the model to save that into the database, and we will use it within the project resource. Okay, so what we need to do here, Rails G model task, and then title as an attribute, and then reference it with the project. So project references. Okay, and once you do that, after doing that, just run the migration. So Rails db migrate. Okay, Rails db migrate, so it will create the project and task table within your schema.rb. Okay, now let's add the association for the task model within the parent project model. Okay, so here you can see we already got two models, project and task, and in the task we can see belongs to project. Why? Because we already reference it while generating the model. Okay, and in the project model we need to do it manually. So here what we can do, has many tasks. Okay, and then inverse of project, and then dependent destroy. Why? Because if we want to delete a project, we would like to delete all of its associated tasks from the database as well. Okay, and then we need to accept the attributes for the task child model or our belongs to model. Okay, this is required step in order to save nested records for the child model in Rails. Okay, so whether you are using has one or has many, you need to do it. So accepts nested attributes for, and then your model name, which is task. So since it has many tasks, so tasks, and then we need to add one option which is allow destroy true. Why? Because we want to allow users the flexibility to remove the associated task as well for a project. Okay, so we need this allow destroy option as true. Okay, and in the task model we already got the belongs to project, so we do not need to do anything yet. Now we need to go to the projects controller. Okay, so since we already generated the scaffolding for the project, so we got a projects controller created by the rails itself. Okay, and in the new action, what we need to do, we need to build the empty task objects for a particular project. Okay, so at the rate project dot task dot build. Okay, since we are using has many relation for the task in the project, so we need to use tasks dot build. If it is one has one, then what you need to do, project dot build underscore task. Okay, but it's has many, so we are using tasks dot build. Okay, so and this is a method to initialize the empty object for nested or child model. Okay, now let's go to the strong parameter method, which is at the bottom of the controller. Here you can see params dot accept uh, project title description. Okay, since I'm familiar with the old way, so I'm just using that way. Okay, params dot require, and then project dot permit. Here we need to permit the project params, which is title and description. Okay, and now we need to allow the tasks attribute. So tasks attributes. Okay, this is a required step to permit the nested params. Okay, and then id, and here title, and then destroy. Why id, sorry, underscore destroy. Why id and destroy here? Because let's say rather than creating new records for the task for a particular project, if you would like to delete existing project task, or you want to update existing project task, then you need id and destroy, so we need to pass it. Okay, and save the controller now. And now we need to go to the form partials for the project, and there we will add nested form fields for the task model. Okay, so open the app use directory, and within this go to the project and in the form. Okay, and where the project controllers sorry project fields end, we need to start our nested form for the uh, task model. Okay, and since we are using doing it using stimulus, so we need to use it do it in the stimulus way. Okay, so let's add a div here, and then data controller. Okay, and whatever the name you want to provide to the controller, you can use here. Okay, so let's say I'm providing nested form, and then we need to use one selector value, and I will explain this later when we implement the controller. Okay, but for now what you can do, let's say data nested form, and then wrapper selector value. Okay, and it should be some selector. Okay, I mean you can provide id of a element or a class of a element as well. Let's say dot tasks. Okay, so now what we need to do, we need to create a div or some html or any html element which has the class as task. Okay, and here the data controller means that in stimulus, to point an html element we use data attributes. Okay, and in the data controller what we will do, I mean in the nested form controller what we will do, we will add events, targets, values for wherever we are using nested form as the data controller or within that block. Okay, so here now close this div. Okay, and then we need to add this div task class. Okay, so here what we can do, div class tasks, close this div. Okay, and what this value mean, that this data nested form wrapper select value dot task means that whenever you refer this value within your stimulus controller, you are referring this div element, which is div task. Okay, now within this div, what we need to do, we need to use the form fields for task model. Okay, so here what we can do, let's say form dot fields for form dot fields for and then tasks. Okay, and then do here you can do task form, close this form block. And now within this form block, we need to render a partial which contains the attribute list, or you can say like the form of for the task. Okay, which is for example only title attribute for now. Okay, but if you wish you can add more attributes there as well. Okay, so here what we need to do, render and then tasks form or task fields, and then you need to allow form builder object here, which is let's say f and then task form. Okay, this nested form, I mean this one, this is not for creating the new task. Okay, this is for loading the existing task for that project within a form so that you can make updates in the existing task. Okay, for creating new task, we need to add another partial which is the template tag. Okay, so we will use the template tag within this div class as well, or after this div. Okay, so let's say we can use this template tag. Okay, by the way, what is the template tag here? Okay, so the template tag is a native HTML element which is used to define HTML fragments that are not rendered immediately in the DOM. Okay, so it means whatever you initialize or whatever you define or whatever you want to represent within this template, it will not be rendered onto the DOM directly. Instead, they are inserted, but they will be loaded with some JavaScript event. Okay, for example, when we click on add task button, then this template will be loaded. Okay, so here what we need to do, uh, within this template, first we need to add some target elements. So here data nested form and then target. Okay, and then here what you can make is target as template. Okay, and here one thing you need to notice, that wherever I'm using the data controller, sorry, data values, except this data controller like wrapper selector value or target, what I'm using data nested form. That means all these targets and values must be defined within the nested form controller in the Stimulus.js. Okay, so now what we need to do here, we need to add, sorry, form dot fields for, let's say just copy this one. Okay, and paste it here. Okay, and here what we need to do, form dot fields for tasks, and then instead of this do task form, sorry, in task, we need to assign a empty object which is task dot new. Okay, and then child index as, let's say, new record. Okay, and here the child index is a placeholder value to uniquely determine a nested form param. I mean, whenever you have multiple tasks associated with a project and you are submitting them together, for every task param you need to define a unique key. Okay, so that's why I'm using a unique new record here, and I will uh, override this value within the stimulus controller when I'm adding a new task form. Okay, and I will replace it with a timestamp, because every timestamp is a unique timestamp. Okay, so with, I mean, with the current timestamp. Okay, so here you can see what we did in template. We did uh, template data nested form target equal to template, and then form dot fields for task. And here you can see, rather than simply doing do task from, what we are doing, we are initializing an empty object of the task model. Okay, and then we are using it within the task form block, and then we are simply rendering this form. Okay, now after this template tag, what you need to do, that we finally need to add a button tag. Okay, so let's say button, type button. make sure to provide the type button here. Why? Because by default it will take the form of the submit button. Okay, so let's make it type button. Okay, and then data action. Okay, and here what we need to use, nested form hash, let's say add task, or let's say add simply. Okay, and we can provide some text here, let's say add task. Okay, now what this data action nested form hash add. Okay, so this means that these are the actions we need to define within our stimulus controller, which is nested form here, and then by hash we are mentioning the action name here. Okay, so when we implement the nested form, this action must be found within the stimulus controller. Okay, so this is what we need to do in the project form. Now we need to create a partial for the task form. So here you can see we created this task fields. Okay, so first save this form, and within the projects app use projects, you need to create a new partial file and name it as taskfields.html.erb. Okay, and here what you need to do, that div and then data nested form target equal to item, and then just close this. And here we need to use the form fields for the task model. Let's say f dot text field, and here it's a title, and then placeholder is task title. Okay, and then we need to add a hidden field, f dot hidden field, which is destroy. Okay, because this destroy field need to be hidden, and we will set its value when we click on the remove button. Okay, so now we need to add the remove button. So what we can do, we can copy this simple button here. Okay, so copy this button, and here what we can do, we can simply paste it, and then type button, and here you can simply use remove. So we need to implement the remove action, and then remove task. Okay, so this is the task fields partial that we need to create. So here you can see what we did, data nested form target item. Okay, and in the template tag we already did data nested form target template. Okay, so whenever we try to add a new task field, okay, it will be replaced by this task partial, and for the existing one it will show the item as the target as item. Okay, and we already add the remove task button here. Okay, and save the partial. So we are half done at this stage. Okay, what we did so far, we created the projects and task model, we defined associations within them, we allow project model to accept nested attributes, we make changes within the controller to accept the nested form params as a strong parameter, and we created partials, and we updated the project form as well to display them. Okay, now what we need to do as the next thing, that we need to implement the stimulus controller. Okay, and within that stimulus controller we will implement add and remove action. Okay, so first go to the terminal, and here how we can generate the stimulus controller. So rails g stimulus, and then here what you can do, let's say nested form. Okay, it will create a nested form, uh, sorry, nested stimulus controller with name nested form for you. Okay, so once you do this, you will see a controller within app javascript nested form controller.js, and here you can find it within the javascript directory, sorry, within the controller directory inside the javascript. Okay, so here it is the nested form controller. Okay, now we need to implement the actions into this stimulus controller, and we also need to define the target and values as well. Okay, so within the export class extend controller, what we can do, first we need to define the targets to capture. I mean the target that we define within the task fields partial and within the template element. Okay, and the target names are template and item. Okay, so here what you need to do, that after or sorry, before connect method, what you can do here, let's say static targets equal to then template and item. Okay, and now we need to define the values here. Okay, and values are a way to pass data like configuration options or state into a controller from HTML. It's like setting variables in the DOM that stimulus can strongly type and react to. Okay, so static values equal to, okay, and within the value what we need to do, wrapper selector. Okay, because here you can see what we did, nested form wrapper selector value. Okay, so we do just need this wrapper selector. Okay, and we need to mention this within the camel casing. So wrapper selector column string. Okay, so we defined the values here. Okay, now we need to add and remove action, which is this. So here you can see we mentioned data action nested form hash add, so we need to implement this add action within the stimulus controller. And here we mentioned remove, so we need to implement this remove action as well. Okay, so now if you wish you can remove this connect method because this is not needed here. Okay, and this is just added into the controller whenever you generate a new stimulus controller. Okay, if you wish you can create your nested sorry stimulus controller manually as well within the app javascript directory. Okay, now let's implement the add event. Okay, here first you need to find the content. Okay, so content, and what will be the content, I mean whenever you click on the add button you need to find this template and this is our content. Okay, and I already told you that template tag contains the html fragment or html snippet which is not directly rendered onto the form. It will only render or clone whenever you perform some event in the javascript. Okay, and when we click on this add task button it will perform an event. Okay, so in that event now we need to load this template target. Okay, so this dot template target dot inner html dot replace. Okay, now what we need to replace, we need to replace this child index. Okay, in case it is new record you can use secure random id or some uid as well, and then you need to replace that value. Okay, so here what we need to do, dot replace and then new record g, and then new date dot get time. Okay, what this will return, that this will return you the current timestamp. Okay, from the javascript. Okay, and now what you need to do, that you need to assign this value within the uh, wrapper selector value. Okay, to its adjacent element or adjacent html element. So this dot element dot query selector. Okay, and then this dot wrapper selector value. Okay, and then here insert adjacent element, sorry adjacent html. Okay, and then before and comma content. Okay, so what we did in this add action, first we get the content, like what content we want to insert within the div or within our query selector or within our wrapper class. So it is the template targets in our html, and in our case template target is the field a new nested form for creating new task. Okay, so just save this, and now after this what we need to do, we need to create the remove action. Okay, and here we need to provide event as well. Okay, and then we need to define the item. So const item equal to event dot target dot closest. Okay, and then here we need to provide data nested form target. Okay, I mean this one. So whenever you click on this remove task, it will find this closest element and then it will remove this item. Okay, so you need to provide this value. Okay, so just do it here, make it single quotes. Okay, so this is our item. Okay, and now we need to identify the destroy field as well. Okay, so const destroy field equal to item dot query selector. Okay, and then input name star equal to hyphen destroy underscore destroy. Okay, which is this hidden field. Okay, so if you inspect this, you will get its name as destroy. Okay, so now save this. Okay, and then if destroy field is true, I mean if the record is to be deleted, so what we will do, we will set its value to 1. Okay, if destroy field, then what we need to do, destroy field dot value equal to 1. Okay, and then item dot style dot display equal to none. Okay, and then in the else part, what we need to do, item dot remove. Okay, so what it is doing here, so let me explain it, that with the remove, what we did, that first we find the item that we need to delete it. So event dot target dot closest, which is this item. When we click on this, so this is the closest item and we need to remove it. And then we found the destroy field, which is this attribute. Okay, the hidden field. Okay, and if this is set to true, then what we need to do, that we need to set its value to 1. Okay, and this is for if you want to remove existing task for a project. Okay, but let's say if you click on the add project and without saving it, you want to remove it, then it will work, then it will come here. Okay, because it doesn't need to set value for destroy field, because this is you're not present in the database, this is only present in the UI. Okay, so this is how it will work. So we added add event and remove events. Okay, now everything has been done. So what we can do, we can just go to the browser and we can see if our implementation is working or not. Okay, so first make sure you run the migration. Okay, and you can restart the server as well. And now go to the browser, and here in the browser, what you need to do, you need to go to the projects index. Okay, when you go to the project, you will see new project. Okay, and here you can see that we have this uh, task field. Okay, so it is by default displaying a empty form field, so you can create task as well. So now let's say create title, so let's say construction management, and here description is say lorem ipsum, and task one, let's say task one for CMS. Okay, and if you click on remove, it will remove it from UI. So what happens here, that this event has been occurred. Okay, so for example, you can use, let's say, alert remove the empty task. Okay, when you do this, and let's refresh the page, when you click on it, no, it is not showing anything. Okay, let's, we will figure out it later. So but still what you can see here, that we have this form. So now let's click let's say construction management, and then description, let's say some lorem ipsum, and task title, let's say task one, and then click on add task. And here what you can do, task two, here you can do, let's say task three. Okay, click on the remove task, so you can remove this task, you can remove this task. These are the empty tasks. Okay, let's create another task. Let's say task 2, and now click on the create project. So when you click on the create project, you can see the form has been submitted successfully, and in the server logs what you can see that this is the params. Okay, and the params is like project title is, these are the projects from which title and description, and here you can see tasks attributes, which is uh, title task and destroy false, title task and destroy false. Okay, now what we need to do, let's edit this project. When you edit this, let's say make it task 2 for this project. Okay, and add a task again, and here what you need to do, let's say task 3, and remove this task. Okay, so what we did here, that we remove one existing task, we updated one existing task, and we are trying to add new task. Okay, and now when you click on the update project, it will again successfully submit the request, and when you go to the server logs, you can see that one task which id is 1 has been deleted, one task has been updated here. Okay, and one new task has been inserted. Okay, that means our stimulus nested form application is stimulus nested form feature is working perfectly, and when you go to the edit page, you can see that it is already loading the existing task for it. Okay, now if you want to display this task in the project show, what you can do, you can simply go to the projects controller. Okay, and within the show action, what you can do, let's say task equal to project dot tasks. Okay, and then go to the show template. Okay, I mean in the render project, here what you can do, let's say for example h1 tasks, and here what you can do, at the rate tasks dot, sorry, not do it here, let's say, because this is also being rendered on the index html as well. So instead of doing this in this partial, what we can do, we can simply display this on the show html. Okay, task. Okay, and here what you can do simply is, let's say p class lead fw bold, and then do it. So here you can simply display task dot title. Okay, save this and go to the browser, refresh the page, you can see these are the tasks for this project. Okay, and you can add if conditions as well, and on and so on. Just let's say only display this task if there is any task present for project or not. Okay, so this is not the concern of this lecture. So what was our main motive, that create a nested form to save uh, child model records along with the parent. Okay, and we achieved that. So let me revise you that what we did from initial. So we first added these project and task model, and here we added association for the task and accept nested attributes. Then within the projects model, projects controller, we need to do this within the new, okay, project.task.build, and here in the project params, you need to mention that what uh, attributes you want to pass. So title and description for the project attributes, and these task attributes, and here this is how you can provide it. Okay, and then we make some changes in the form to allow nested form submission for the project. So here we added this task and so on, and then we created this task field partial, where we added these fields, and then we created the stimulus controller. Okay, and why I just name it as nested form, because I just wanted to idealize this form or standardize this controller, because let's say if in a Rails application we have other such models where we need to implement nested form for their associations, so we can use this common controller. Okay, we rather than creating separate controller for each nested form. That's why I did not name it as nested task form. Okay, but it's just the nested form, so we can use it everywhere where we need it. Okay, and since classes and every attribute name is standardized, so we can use it wherever we need it. Okay, so I hope you like this, creating nested form using stimulus. Okay, so if you like this, just share and subscribe, and we will meet into the next lecture. Till then, tata, goodbye, take care, and stay safe.